It was supposed to be a golden sunset to a life well lived, a time for quiet reflection, maybe a few more rounds of golf, and certainly to bask in the warmth of family. My wife, bless her soul, had always dreamed of us growing old together, watching our son, Mark, build his own empire, his own family. We poured everything into him, every sacrifice, every late night, every penny saved. He was our world, our future, and for a long time, I believe he was a good son. A bit entitled, perhaps a little too keen on the easy life, but fundamentally good. I remember his graduation day, the pride swelling in my chest as he walked across that stage. He promised us the world that day, promised to repay our kindness tenfold. We laughed, we cried, we celebrated a future that in my mind was destined for joy and shared prosperity. He even moved back in with us after college, to save up, he said. We never charged him a dime. We cooked his meals, did his laundry, gave him a comfortable roof over his head. We saw it as an investment in his future, a launching pad for his success. Oh, how wrong we were. How spectacularly, tragically wrong. This wasn't a launching pad. It was a nest, and he was a cuckoo, fattening himself on our generosity before pushing us out. I remember the day he bought the lottery ticket. It was a whim, a joke. We were at the grocery store, and he saw the flashy Powerball sign. Might as well, he'd chuckled, tossing $1 into the machine. We all laughed, imagining what we'd do if we won. Grand vacations, a new house for us, maybe a small business for him. Harmless fantasy, right? Wrong. So devastatingly, horrifyingly wrong. The phone call came a week later. My hands trembled as I answered, hearing his voice, strangely subdued. Dad, I won. I actually won my heart sword. A million possibilities flashed before my eyes. Financial security, finally. No more worrying about medical bills, about retirement savings dwindling. We could help him invest, set him up for life, and still have enough for ourselves. That's what a family does, isn't it? They share, they support, they uplift each other. That's what I taught him. That's what his mother taught him. But the look in his eyes when he finally came home that night was chilling. It wasn't joy, not really. It was something colder, something calculating. He avoided my gaze, avoided his mother's. He spoke in clipped sentences, already distant. That's when the first tendrils of fear began to coil in my stomach, a premonition of the storm to come. He'd won a staggering sum, enough to change not just his life, but generations. And that's when the mask truly began to slip. The transformation was swift, brutal, and utterly heart-wrenching. The very next day, his girlfriend, Sarah, who had always struck me as a bit too opportunistic, was practically glued to his side. Her eyes, once demure, now sparkled with a brazen avarice that made my skin crawl. She was whispering in his ear constantly, her laughter a shrill counterpoint to our increasingly strained silence. We, his parents, were suddenly relegated to the background, specters in our own home. He stopped eating dinner with us, opting for lavish takeout with Sarah in his room, the sounds of their revelry echoing through the house, a cruel symphony to our growing unease. My wife, bless her gentle soul, tried to talk to him. She made his favorite meals, tried to engage him in conversations about his plans, about the future. He brushed her off, barely looking up from his phone. I'm busy, Mom, he'd grumble. Got things to sort out indeed. The sorting out began with subtle digs, then escalated to outright insults. This house is so old-fashioned, Sarah would comment loudly, within earshot, as if we weren't even there. Don't you want something like modern, Mark? He'd just nod, a blank expression on his face, as if agreeing to an undeniable truth. Then came the discussions about his privacy and independence. He started locking his bedroom door, something he hadn't done since his rebellious teenage years. He bought a new car, a flashy sports model, without a word to us. We saw it glistening in the driveway, one morning, a symbol of his newfound, isolating wealth. It wasn't the car itself that stung. It was the deliberate exclusion, the cold shoulder. The final blow, the one that shattered my heart into a million pieces, came during what was supposed to be a celebratory family dinner. My wife had cooked for hours her famous roast, his favorite. We sat at the dining table, the air thick with an unspoken tension. He cleared his throat, avoiding our eyes. Sarah, of course, was smirking, already knowing what was to come. "Mom, Dad," he began, his voice devoid of emotion, "Sarah and I have decided. We're buying a new house. A big one. In the hills." My wife's face lit up, a flicker of hope. "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. A fresh start. We can help you pick out furniture." He cut her off, his voice flat. "No, Mom, not we, just us. Sarah and I." He paused, taking a sip of water, prolonging the agony. "And we've decided it's time for you to move out of this house." The words hung in the air, cold, sharp like daggers. My wife gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I felt a cold dread spread through me. "What do you mean, Mark?" I managed, my voice a strangled whisper. "This is our home. Your mother and I have lived here for 40 years. He finally looked at me, his eyes hard, unyielding. "It's my home now, Dad. I'm buying it from you. At market value, of course. And you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." He then slid a legal document across the table, a notice to vacate. He had already consulted lawyers. He had already planned this. The betrayal was absolute, complete, and utterly devoid of remorse. I stared at the paper, then at him, my own son. The boy I had carried on my shoulders, taught to ride a bike, read bedtime stories too. He had just disinherited us, evicted us from our own home, all for the sake of a lottery ticket and a greedy girlfriend. My wife burst into tears, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't speak. I could only stare at the monster he had become, a monster sculpted by sudden wealth and moral decay. And in that moment, as the bitter taste of betrayal filled my mouth, a different kind of resolve began to form, cold and hard, in my heart. He had made a grave mistake. He had underestimated the old man. The shock wore off, slowly, replaced by a cold, simmering rage. But it wasn't the kind of rage that explodes in shouts and curses. It was a quiet, methodical fury that coiled deep within me. My wife was inconsolable. She cried herself to sleep most nights, her heart broken by the son she had nurtured. I had to be strong for her, but beneath the stoic exterior, a plan was beginning to take shape. Mark, meanwhile, was oblivious. He and Sarah were like two vultures feasting on their newfound fortune, completely engrossed in their opulent new life. They started house hunting, driving around in his new sports car, loud music blaring, as if to deliberately flaunt their prosperity. He'd even stopped by the house once, not to check on us, but to remind us about the 30-day deadline, a smug smirk on his face. "Found a great place, Dad," he'd announced, leaning against the doorframe, his voice dripping with condescension. "Much bigger than this old place. You'll be fine. There are plenty of apartments in town." My blood ran cold, but I just nodded, feigning a defeated silence. "Oh yes," I'd manage, my voice raspy. "I'm sure we will." I needed them to think I was broken, defeated, compliant. That was my mask. While they reveled in their perceived victory, I was quietly working. My first call was to my old friend, Robert, a brilliant, albeit eccentric, lawyer I'd known since college. He was known for his sharp mind and his unwavering loyalty. "Robert," I'd said, my voice low and steady, "I need your help. My son, he's done something unthinkable." I laid out the whole story, the betrayal, the eviction notice. Robert listened, his silence a testament to the gravity of the situation. When I finished, he just said, "He made a mistake, my friend. A very big mistake." Together, we started to piece together the legal puzzle. I also began discreetly gathering information. I knew Mark was sloppy, always had been. He left his phone unlocked, his financial documents scattered. I wasn't looking to steal. I was looking to understand, to find the crack in his carefully constructed facade. I started subtly questioning him about the lottery ticket itself, about how he claimed the winnings, the bank accounts he'd opened. He, of course, waved me off, dismissing my concerns as the ramblings of an old man. "Don't worry about it, Dad," he'd said, impatient. "It's all handled. Legal and everything legal," he said. Oh, the irony. The more he dismissed me, the more confident I became. He had no idea what was coming. I spent hours online, researching lottery regulations, tax laws, inheritance rules. Robert, meanwhile, delved into the specifics of his claim. We discovered some rather interesting discrepancies, small at first, seemingly insignificant. But as we dug deeper, a pattern began to emerge, a pattern of sloppiness, of cutting corners, of trying to circumvent certain legal requirements. He was so focused on the glitz and glamour of his winnings, so eager to shake off his perceived obligations, that he had overlooked one crucial detail, one enormous, gaping secret that he believed was safely buried. He truly believed he was untouchable. He believed his old man was just a helpless relic, easily discarded. He had no idea I was meticulously constructing a trap, a legal masterpiece that would not only expose his greed, but also unravel his entire fraudulent kingdom. The clock was ticking on our 30-day eviction, but it was also ticking on his reign. The day of the eviction deadline dawned, cold and bleak, much like the mood in our house. Mark, true to his word, had arranged for a moving company to assist us, a thinly veiled gesture of control rather than help. He showed up bright and early, Sarah trailing behind him, both of them radiating a smug satisfaction that made my stomach churn. "Morning, Dad," he said, too cheerfully, as if this were just another ordinary day. "Just making sure everything's on schedule." I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a stranger. The son I had raised was gone, replaced by this entitled, arrogant man. "Everything is indeed on schedule, Mark," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. "In fact, you might say it's all coming together perfectly." He just smirked, missing the double meaning entirely. Good," he mumbled, already turning his attention to his phone. Sarah, ever the vulture, was already surveying our belongings, making snide remarks about their age and obsolescence. "Finally, some room to breathe," she whispered to Mark, loud enough for me to hear. They thought they had one. They thought they had successfully pushed us out and claimed our home as their trophy. But they were about to witness the true meaning of a Pyrrhic victory. Later that day, as the movers were carefully loading our boxes onto the truck, Robert arrived. He walked in, impeccably dressed, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Mark, who was supervising the move with an air of self-importance, barely acknowledged him. "Who's this?" he asked me dismissively. "Just an old friend, Mark," I said, a mischievous glint in my eye. "He's here to witness the proceedings." Robert simply nodded, taking a seat on a still-packed box, observing the scene with a quiet intensity. He held a thick, leather-bound briefcase on his lap. The air in the house, already heavy with the scent of cardboard and stale memories, began to crackle with an unspoken tension. As the last of our boxes were being loaded, Mark strutted over, a pre-written check in his hand, a final flourish to his perceived triumph. "Well, Dad," he announced, holding up the check, "here's the payment for the house. Market value, just as we agreed. You can't say I didn't play fair." He tried to hand it to me, but I didn't take it. Instead, I looked him directly in the eye, a gaze filled with a lifetime of love and now, an equally potent measure of disappointment and resolve. "Mark," I said, my voice cutting through the manufactured cheerfulness, "before I accept this, there's something you need to understand. Something you overlooked." His smirk faltered slightly. Sarah, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, stopped rummaging through a box of old photo albums and looked up, her eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about, old man?" Mark retorted, a hint of impatience creeping into his voice. "The deal's done. You're out. We're in." I gestured to Robert, who slowly, deliberately opened his briefcase. Inside, nestled among stacks of meticulously organized documents, was a single, official-looking envelope. Robert pulled it out, its crisp edges a stark contrast to the chaos of our leaving. "Mark," Robert began, his voice calm but firm, "there are certain regulations, certain disclosures that must be made when claiming a lottery prize of your magnitude. Specifically, regarding the source of the funds used to purchase the winning ticket." Mark's face paled. He looked at me, then at Robert, a flicker of panic in his eyes. He had no idea what was coming. This wasn't about the house anymore. This was about everything. The air in the living room thickened, crackling with an unspoken dread that finally began to penetrate Mark's self-absorbed bubble. He stared at Robert, then at me, his carefully constructed composure finally crumbling. Sarah, sensing the shift, edged closer to Mark, her hand instinctively going to his arm, though her eyes were darting nervously between us, a silent alarm ringing in her mind. What were you talking about?" Mark stammered, his voice losing its arrogant edge. "The ticket was mine. I bought it." Robert simply raised an eyebrow, a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. He pulled out a document from the envelope, a carbon copy of a bank statement. "Indeed, Mark, you did purchase the ticket on April 14th at 3:17 p.m. at the local grocery store. We have the receipt and even the store's security footage confirming your presence." He paused, letting the information sink in, then delivered the first devastating blow. "However, the funds used to purchase that ticket, they didn't originate from your account, did they?" Mark's eyes widened in genuine fear. He looked at me, a desperate plea for an explanation. I met his gaze, my expression unwavering. He had built his kingdom on sand, and I was about to watch it collapse. "As it turns out, Mark," Robert continued, his voice calm, "on April 14th at 3:10 p.m., a $7 transfer was made from your father's personal checking account directly into your debit account. A transfer that conveniently arrived just 7 minutes before you purchased the winning lottery ticket." He held up the bank statements, side by side, the evidence irrefutable. My wife, who had been listening with a mixture of confusion and growing horror, suddenly understood. Her eyes met mine, a silent question passing between us. I simply gave her a slight, reassuring nod. Mark's face was ashen. He knew. He had forgotten that small, seemingly insignificant detail. The $7. He had been short on cash that day, a common occurrence, and I, being the ever-supportive father, had simply sent him a few dollars to cover his small purchase without a second thought. He had never paid me back. He never even mentioned it. And now, that small, forgotten act of paternal generosity was about to unravel his entire fraudulent empire. According to lottery regulations, Mark, Robert explained, his voice gaining a chilling edge, if the funds used to purchase a winning ticket can be traced to another individual, especially a parent, there are very specific implications. It could be argued that the ticket was in essence a joint purchase, or even a gift from the source of the funds. Sarah, ever the opportunist, suddenly piped up. It was a gift from his father. Robert turned to her, a cold glint in his eye. A gift of $7, perhaps. But did Mr. Miller explicitly state that the potential winnings of that $7 gift were also a gift to Mark? Were there witnesses? A written agreement? Sarah stammered, unable to respond. Her face was as pale as Mark's. Robert then produced another document, a legal precedent from a similar lottery dispute case. In cases like this, the courts have consistently ruled that the original source of the funds holds a significant claim to the winnings, particularly when a clear pattern of financial dependency and parental support can be established. And given Mr. Miller's consistent financial support of Mark, including providing housing and daily expenses for many years, the argument for shared ownership of the ticket's origins is incredibly strong. Mark was visibly trembling. He looked like a cornered animal. The arrogance was gone, replaced by raw, unadulterated fear. He had been so consumed by his greed, so confident in his ability to manipulate, that he had overlooked the most fundamental principle of family, that actions have consequences and that even the smallest details can hold the greatest power. Mark stood there, frozen, his face a grotesque mask of shock and dawning horror. Sarah, surprisingly, was the first to react, though her reaction was pure self-preservation. "Mark, what have you done?" she hissed, pulling her hand away from his arm as if he were suddenly contagious. "You told me everything was above board." Her voice was shrill, accusatory. The cracks in their united front were already showing, and the facade of their glorious future was beginning to shatter. Robert, ever the calm professional, simply continued, laying out the precise legal implications. The State Lottery Commission, when informed of these discrepancies, will undoubtedly launch an investigation. This could lead to a freeze on the winnings, a protracted legal battle, and potentially, if intent to defraud is proven, even criminal charges. The words criminal charges hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Mark visibly flinched, his eyes darting frantically around the room, as if searching for an escape route that wasn't there. Furthermore, Robert added, now addressing Mark directly, his voice firm and unwavering, given the circumstances of your eviction notice and the documented pattern of your father's financial support, we have a very strong case for claiming a substantial portion, if not all, of your lottery winnings on the grounds of shared ownership of the ticket, unjust enrichment, and even emotional distress for your parents. My wife, who had been silently weeping, suddenly looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and a flicker of hope. She finally understood the depth of my plan, the intricate trap I had laid. Mark, meanwhile, tried to regain some semblance of control, but his voice was weak, trembling. No, this is ridiculous. It was a gift. He gives me money all the time. I stepped forward then, my voice resonating with an authority I hadn't used with him in years. Yes, Mark, I did give you money. For years. I gave you a home, an education, a lifetime of support. I gave you everything. And you repaid it by trying to throw your mother and me out of our home. By trying to erase us from your life for a few $1 million. My words were daggers, each one piercing his fragile ego. That $7, Mark, was just another act of a father taking care of his son, but also proved that you were still dependent, still relying on our resources. It was not a gift for you to build a castle on and then lock us out of. The realization dawned on him fully then. The small, forgotten act of paternal generosity, the $7 I'd sent him, was not just a technicality. It was a symbol of his continued dependence, a glaring contradiction to his sudden claim of complete independence and sole ownership. He hadn't been an independent lottery winner. He had been a lucky recipient of a ticket bought with his father's money. He had built his grand betrayal on a foundation of sand, and that foundation was now crumbling beneath him. Sarah, seeing the writing on the wall, quickly decided where her loyalties lay. You know what, Mark? She spat, pulling her phone out. I can't believe I wasted my time with you. This is insane. She turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving him utterly alone, exposed and vulnerable. The movers, who had been silently witnessing the unfolding drama, quickly finished their task and made a hasty exit, leaving the three of us in the echoing silence of our almost empty home. Mark stood there, defeated, his head bowed. The proud, arrogant posture was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a broken man. He had lost everything: his girlfriend, his supposed fortune, and most importantly, any shred of respect or love he might have had from his parents. And I, the old man he had underestimated, had watched it all happen, a grim satisfaction settling in my heart. Justice, it seemed, had a rather ironic sense of humor. The aftermath was swifter and more devastating than even I had anticipated. Once Robert officially notified the Lottery Commission of the disputed funds and presented our compelling evidence, an immediate freeze was placed on Mark's winnings. The news, as these things always do, spread like wildfire. First through our small town, then online, fueled by local news outlets and the insatiable appetite for dramatic human interest stories. Mark, once the toast of the town for his supposed good fortune, became a pariah. His attempts to fight back were futile. Robert had meticulously built an unassailable case, showcasing not only the financial dependence, but also the emotional distress Mark had inflicted upon his parents. The narrative was simple and damning. An ungrateful son, enriched by his father's generosity, attempting to evict his elderly parents from their home. The court of public opinion was merciless. His image, once one of a lucky young man, was now tainted with greed and betrayal. The new house in the hills never materialized. The real estate deal fell through when the freeze on his funds became public. Sarah, true to her opportunistic nature, not only left him, but also made a public statement to a local paper, portraying herself as an innocent victim caught in his web of deception, further cementing his villainous image. He lost his job. Who wants to hire a man facing potential fraud charges, especially one with such a publicly shamed reputation? His friends, fair-weather companions attracted by his sudden wealth, evaporated like mist. He was left with nothing but the crushing weight of his monumental error. My wife, after weeks of processing, slowly began to heal. The initial grief for the son she thought she knew was profound, but as the legal proceedings unfolded, a sense of righteous vindication settled over her. She saw not just the betrayal, but the justice being served. We didn't want all his money. That was never the point. Our primary goal was to reclaim our home, to expose his treachery, and to ensure he faced consequences for his actions. After intense negotiations, Mark, utterly defeated, agreed to a settlement. He relinquished all claims to our house, signing it back over to us, free and clear. He also agreed to a substantial financial settlement. A significant portion of the frozen lottery winnings, which Robert ensured was structured as recompense for our emotional distress and the years of financial support he had received. We used a portion of that money to renovate our beloved home, updating it, making it truly ours again, free from the lingering shadow of his betrayal. The rest, we put into a trust for our future, for a secure retirement we now truly deserved. Mark, stripped of his fortune and his social standing, eventually moved out of state, a ghost of his former self. I heard whispers that he was working odd jobs, living a life of anonymity, far from the lavish dreams he had so arrogantly envisioned. He never apologized, not truly. But his defeat, his public humiliation, and the complete unraveling of his life were, in their own way, a silent apology. I sometimes wonder if he ever truly understood the gravity of his actions, or if he simply resented the fact that his grand scheme had been outsmarted by the very father he had dismissed. For me, there was no gloating, no vengeful celebration, just a quiet, profound sense of peace. The storm had passed, and the sun, though setting, was finally warm again. We had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged, not just intact, but stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the quiet dignity of our own lives. And as I sat on my porch, looking out at the sunset over the home that was truly ours once more, I knew that some lessons, even the hardest ones, were worth learning. My life, once thrown into a whirlwind of emotional devastation, slowly but surely found its equilibrium again. The house, our sanctuary, felt lighter, imbued with a renewed sense of peace and belonging. We celebrated its reclamation with a small, intimate gathering of close friends and family, those who had stood by us, unwavering, through the darkest of times. Robert was there, of course, a quiet hero in his own right, his sharp legal mind having meticulously orchestrated Mark's downfall. He raised a glass to us, a silent toast to justice served. The financial settlement, substantial as it was, wasn't spent on frivolous luxuries. Instead, it became a bedrock of security, allowing my wife and I to finally plan for a retirement free from worry, free from the anxieties that had once plagued our golden years. We established a charitable foundation in my wife's name, a legacy of kindness and generosity, a stark contrast to the greed that had nearly consumed our lives. It was our way of taking something painful and transforming it into a force for good. People in town, those who had initially offered pity, now offered respect. They saw not just the victim of a heinous betrayal, but a man who had stood his ground, fought for what was right, and emerged victorious. Their words of encouragement, their shared stories of similar family struggles, became a balm for my wife's wounded heart. She began to volunteer more, finding solace and purpose in helping others, her gentle spirit slowly but surely regaining its vibrant glow. My golf game even improved, strangely enough. The weight of the world had been lifted, allowing for a clearer swing, a more focused mind. I found myself appreciating the simple joys again. The smell of freshly cut grass, the companionship of old friends, the warmth of the sun on my face. These were the true riches, the ones that Mark, in his myopic pursuit of material wealth, had completely overlooked. I sometimes see news reports about other lottery winners, their lives spiraling out of control, their families torn apart by sudden fortune. It's a tragic reminder of the corrosive power of money when placed in the wrong hands, when devoid of moral compass or gratitude. I often wonder what Mark is doing now. There are no dramatic tales of his resurgence, no reports of redemption, just silence. And perhaps that is his truest punishment, to be forgotten, to have squandered such an incredible opportunity, not just for wealth, but for the chance to be a good son, a good man. I learned a profound lesson from this ordeal, that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the integrity of one's character, the strength of one's relationships, and the unwavering belief in what is right. It taught me that while betrayal can wound deeply, it can also forge an unshakable resolve. It reminded me that even the most unassuming individuals can possess a quiet strength, a meticulous patience that can ultimately triumph over arrogance and deceit. And as I look back, with the benefit of hindsight and the comfort of peace, I realized that Mark's betrayal, as painful as it was, ultimately liberated us. It freed us from the illusion of his love, from the burden of his entitlement, and allowed us to build a future truly our own, founded on honesty, dignity, and unwavering self-respect. It was a brutal awakening, but an awakening nonetheless. And for that, in a strange, twisted way, I'm almost grateful. The tranquility that settled over our lives was not a passive acceptance, but an active, deliberate choice. Every morning, I would wake up, walk out to our garden, and tend to the roses, their vibrant blooms a testament to resilience, to life pushing through adversity. My wife would often join me. Her laughter, once a rarity, now a frequent melody in our home. We found joy in the small things, the quiet moments that truly define a life well lived. We reconnected with relatives we had drifted apart from, sharing meals and stories, rebuilding the fabric of our extended family. Our grandson, a bright, compassionate young man, spent more time with us, his innocent questions and genuine affection a balm to our souls. He became a beacon of hope, a reminder of the good that still existed in the world, a contrast to the darkness we had faced. He often asked about Uncle Mark, his young mind struggling to comprehend the complexities of adult betrayal. I would tell him, gently, about choices, about the importance of kindness and integrity, try to instill in him the values that Mark had so carelessly discarded. We even took that dream vacation my wife had always talked about, a cruise through the fjords of Norway. The majestic landscapes, the crisp, clean air, the endless horizons, they were a powerful antidote to the cramped, suffocating feeling of being trapped in our own home, held hostage by a greedy sun. Each new vista, each breathtaking moment, felt like a victory, a reclaiming of a life that was almost stolen from us. The legal battle had been exhausting, both emotionally and financially, but it had also been clarifying. It had stripped away the illusions, revealing the true nature of loyalty, family, and justice. We learned who our true friends were, who genuinely cared, and who were merely bystanders, eager for gossip. That discernment, that sharpened intuition, became an invaluable asset, allowing us to navigate the world with a newfound clarity. I often think about the irony of it all. Mark, in his desperate bid for ultimate freedom, had shackled himself. He had traded genuine connection for fleeting riches, respect for contempt, and peace for perpetual regret. He had sought to humiliate us, to diminish us, but in doing so, he had only magnified our strength, our resolve, and ultimately, our triumph. His act of betrayal, intended to destroy us, instead became the catalyst for our liberation. It taught us the true value of what we already possessed, each other, our home, our integrity, and our hard-won peace of mind. And as the sun would set each evening, casting long shadows across our lovingly restored home, I would feel a profound gratitude, not for the money, not for the victory, but for the clarity, the peace, and the renewed appreciation for a life that, despite its challenges, was undeniably, beautifully ours. It was a life built on a foundation of truth, resilience, and an unyielding belief in the enduring power of justice. And that, I realized, was worth more than all the lottery winnings in the world. The echoes of that painful chapter eventually faded, replaced by the vibrant hum of a life rebuilt. Our home, once a battleground, became a haven once more, filled with the warmth of laughter and the aroma of my wife's baking. We decided to embrace a new chapter, to actively cultivate happiness and give back to the community that had supported us. We started a small scholarship fund in our town, helping promising young students pursue their dreams, a quiet act of defiance against the self-serving greed we had witnessed. It was a tangible way to manifest the generosity that had always been a cornerstone of our values, the very generosity Mark had tried to exploit. We also took up new hobbies. My wife joined a local gardening club, her green thumb bringing beauty and life to public spaces. I, surprisingly, found a passion for woodworking, crafting intricate pieces that filled our home with the scent of cedar and accomplishment. Each stroke of the chisel, each perfectly sanded surface, was a meditative act, a testament to patience and precision, the very qualities that had allowed me to outmaneuver Mark. These new pursuits weren't just distractions. They were affirmations of life, celebrations of creativity and purpose. They were a testament to our refusal to let bitterness consume us. Instead, we chose growth, renewal, and the quiet satisfaction of building something beautiful with our own hands, with our own hearts. Our relationship with our grandson flourished. He grew into a kind, thoughtful young man, often seeking my advice, my stories, eager to learn from our experiences. I saw in him the best of our family, the empathy and integrity that Mark had so tragically lacked. He was a living legacy, a symbol of hope for a future unmarred by the shadows of betrayal. He often spoke about wanting to make a positive impact on the world, a sentiment that filled my heart with pride and a quiet sense of redemption. The occasional news snippet about Mark would still surface, but they were distant, detached, like old, faded photographs. His attempts to rebuild his life were, from what I gathered, largely unsuccessful. The stigma of his actions clung to him like a shroud, a constant reminder of the consequences of his choices. He remained adrift, unable to anchor himself, to find the true purpose and connection that only genuine relationships and selfless actions can provide. And in those moments, I would feel a pang of something akin to sadness, not for the money he lost, but for the man he failed to become. I had loved my son fiercely, and that love, though irrevocably fractured, still held a faint, residual ache. But it was an ache tempered by the profound understanding that sometimes the greatest act of love is to allow someone to face the consequences of their own making, to learn the hard lessons that can only be taught by life itself. Our revenge, if one could even call it that, wasn't about inflicting pain. It was about reclaiming dignity, restoring balance, and asserting the truth. It was about demonstrating that integrity, kindness, and unwavering resolve are far more potent forces than greed, arrogance, and deceit. And as I looked at my wife, her eyes sparkling with a quiet joy, her hand gently intertwined with mine, I knew, with absolute certainty, that we had won. Not just a legal battle, not just a house, but something far more valuable, the enduring peace of a life lived with honor. This was the true lottery. The quiet revolution within our lives continued, gathering momentum with each passing season. We discovered a newfound freedom, not just from financial worry, but from emotional baggage that had once weighed us down. We often reminisced about the ordeal, not with bitterness, but with a strange sense of gratitude for the profound lessons it had imparted. My wife, in particular, blossomed. She channeled her past pain into a powerful empathy, becoming a mentor for other elderly individuals facing similar family disputes. Her stories, once whispers of private agony, became beacons of strength, inspiring others to stand up for themselves, to find their voice against injustice. She spoke with a quiet authority, her gentle demeanor masking an iron will that had been forged in the crucible of betrayal. I, meanwhile, found immense satisfaction in teaching woodworking classes at the local community center. Sharing my skills, seeing the spark of creation in the eyes of my students, was deeply fulfilling. We even held a small exhibition of their work, a celebration of handcrafted beauty and shared purpose. It was a stark contrast to the emptiness of Mark's material pursuit, a testament to the enduring value of human connection and tangible creation. Our home, now a vibrant hub of activity, frequently hosted friends, family, and even new acquaintances drawn to our story of resilience. We filled it with laughter, with lively discussions, with the comforting rhythm of shared meals. It became a symbol of renewal, a place where wounds could heal and new beginnings could flourish. The ghost of Mark's betrayal, once a haunting presence, was finally exorcised, replaced by the living spirit of warmth and camaraderie. We often received letters and emails from people who had heard our story, thanking us for sharing our journey, for giving them hope. They came from all walks of life, from different corners of the world, united by the universal themes of family, betrayal, and the fight for what is right. It was a humbling experience, realizing that our personal struggle had resonated so deeply with so many. And in those shared stories, we found an even greater sense of purpose. We had become accidental advocates, unwitting symbols of justice and resilience. The legal victory, while important, was merely the first step. The true triumph lay in the rebuilding, in the profound personal growth, and in the unexpected ability to inspire others. We knew Mark's life, in contrast, remained mired in regret. The lottery winnings, once a source of endless possibility, had become his curse. He was a cautionary tale, a living monument to the destructive power of greed and the irreparable damage of a broken trust. And while there was no malice in my heart, there was a quiet understanding that his self-inflicted wounds were far deeper and more lasting than any legal judgment could impose. We had chosen a different path, a path of healing.